I believe it's done with Slido.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I think you might not have the updated plan. I'm really sorry about that. I think to send that you've got the right plan. Can I send it? Should I send it now? Would it be helpful? Just go with it.
I have it here.
Here's Nigel. You got a printed version?
I have a printed version.
Oh, do you?
No. Sorry, I meant to send it yesterday.
I can go, we can walk you through it.
It's easier. It's easier than this one. This one's quite tricky.
I hope we have a go.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I put it through with Nigel.
Oh, that's okay. Let's get this one.
Yeah, we don't do that way.
Okay, I need to take notes that you don't have anything. Let me just take a picture of it. I print everything the old way. I'm Patricia.
These are the bits you're interested in. Just leave it to the IP.
So the important thing here, I think, is that there is a micro link with a password that we want the people in the Zoom to access, because we will give here stickers and photos, and what we want them is to be able to click on that.
So basically, sorry, Patricia, sorry. So you should have a presentation set up. That was the first thing to say.
Yeah.
So you've got the presentation. So I have a look at it. So
Yeah.
the reason I never sent you the thing is because I never got an answer back from the presentation, and I just forgot to follow
Do you want to sit here next to Mark?
Just check. So
Actually, we can probably just stick up on the screen just for a sec.
Stick up on the screen.
Just pop up. It's up.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's up. So if you click on that, you'll see
you've got
it
it
on
there.
there.
Okay, so next. Okay, perfect.
And you just click some of them to see. Okay, it's perfect.
So just to get, so I went into my seemed pretty like, so I'm really sorry I didn't get you up those times. When we went through it, the problem was it wasn't around last week, and so some things change in terms of what we can and can't do, so we kind of replanned it. Just speaking to it. But there's an online, Tristan is online. He says he's logging on at 10:15 to the online platform. Will you be able to know? You'll be able to like see him and know.
Yes.
Okay. So he says 10:15. He'll be doing some of the presenting, and that's where I put his name on it.
Yeah.
But he'll have to say to me, he'll have to say to me, next slide, and then I'll use the clicker. So that's the bit that's changed from the version.
So we don't need to share screen from him.
Because when I spoke to Nigel, he basically, which was only yesterday, he said it would be much easier if I just do the clicker.
Yes.
Then you try and go between it. So that's
Okay.
why we kind of updated stuff. Yeah, sorry, it's all a bit last minute. So basically, I've got the clicker for the whole thing. Trisha will do we'll give them some post-it notes and stuff. And I think you should have a mic as well. We asked for an extra mic.
So we've got two handhelds.
Amazing. So I'm
Okay, I'm for that.
And you've got typebooks for yourself.
yeah, so it's typed, and then that's for when we ask questions, and I'm happy to take the mic to people as well. I mean, if you're there to help out.
Yeah.
But so I
We are
think
going to ask you them. We are going to ask the audience, maybe a couple of people, the spotlight.
yeah. I mean, partly we put a bit of a time buffer in this thing as well. We'll see. It's one of those. If we run low on time, then we won't, do so much. Sorry, so I think a lot of it's just going to have to be, we'll say, can we switch, as well as having a plan, so just say to you, we switch to Tristan, who's now going to present and then come back. So yeah, he seems to say the best thing is just to communicate like as we go along.
during the presentation, he will be able, because he will present as well, he will be able to present.
Yeah.
Okay, coming back, sorry, I wasn't there. So we plan at least one time to ask the people to bring, so maybe a couple of people here. If we want people in the audience, in online to say something, what we call them, raise your hand.
Yeah.
No, we discussed that with Tristan, no.
Oh, okay.
No, Tristan, it's in the fact, Tristan will be summarising. We decided that just was too complicated, so we're trying to spotlight people in the online audience.
Okay.
So Tristan will be summarising for the people. So it'll be going over to Tristan and he can read, he'll have been in the workshop or whatever, the breakout room, and he'll summarise. So we don't need to spotlight anyone in the audience online, it's only Tristan.
Okay, so that's okay, so I'll ask Tristan, you can summarize?
Yes.
Okay, so when we
He's just talking to Tristan.
so I would okay, so I would say Tristan, can you summarize, what the insights from the Mario?
Yeah.
Okay, I did that. And then at the end of that time, here I asked as well in the chat to Tristan.
No. Okay, just on it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we have time, then fine. Is that all okay? Is there anything else? So
He's just come in just now. Hi Tristan.
Hello.
Hear me just now? Yep, cool. So I've just got you in here just now with myself and Mark. I'm doing the tech here in the room at the down in Perth. Just been getting a little update on your changes and stuff. So I gather you're going to be doing obviously a bit of presenting from online, and if you wanted to set up breakout rooms and stuff, if you send a message to me, so that's the MPG Zoom 3 is if you want to send me chat,
yeah,
I'll get that. Okay.
So the Zoom 3 one, not the tech one.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Make it loud in my ears. Oh, that's a bit uncomfortable. See you later. Somebody just got out. So you look great in your camera. That's wonderful, and you sound great as well. So
Good.
that'll be great for coming in. I see we've got one person waiting to come in at the moment. So I'm just going to go on mute and chat to you guys. Everyone's out having teas and coffees just now. It's probably going to take them a little while to get dragged into the room. We'll be putting you'll see people coming in, or one person coming in at least. And,
so yeah, kind of.
Then we'll sort of bring up the names as we're just about to go live.
Yeah.
So you see that.
So all the people who are online and participating in the workshop will be here on Zoom, so I'll be able to kind of count how many people there are and then work out.
Yeah, and also in the room they can see the folk, and we've got a locked off camera which we'll be able to capture a wee bit from that as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think.
See you now.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, it's tricky with the light. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, sure. Okay, the camera is there. Okay, but they could be. Yeah, so they want that. Oh, okay. Check. So if I'm around here. Hello? Okay. I just. You're talking about the workshop? Yes. Please. I'll be around here. So. Thanks. Yeah, but no, 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 no.
We will do some individual activities, but also some group activities. All sit down, all sat. So don't worry, you know, no gym for you. Are you here for the question? See? Please sit down. We have some activities that are individual, but we do have at least one group, you know, talking. You can also we will have activity, one activity in group. So you can start on your table if you want to work with that topic. Okay, you are ready for the question? Please sit down. Let's elaborate this thing.
Okay, welcome to the workshop Goodbye Shiny Robots and Glowing Brains, delivered by Better Images of AI project. So, we don't only have an online and in-person audience, but also we have online hosts and 2 in-person hosts. So, online we have Kristen Fern, who is executive producer for the BBC R&D. He leads innovation projects related to media and internet. With me, I have Tania Duarte, who set up We and AI, a non-profit organization working in projects about public AI literacy and empowerment, and myself, Patricia Gestoso. I'm head of diversity and inclusion for We and AI, as well as inclusion strategies, and I help tech leaders to leverage diversity and inclusion in their business strategy. So, what we are going to do today? So, we have brought this workshop in 2 stages, if you want. In the first part, we will look at the images of artificial intelligence we see today. First, we will start with you. We want to know what is your feedback about those images. Then we will share with you what research on AI imaginary is telling us about the patterns we see. And we will go back to you to tell us what do you think about it as well from that research. Then we will move to the second part of the workshop, where we will actually share with you
what are more about the better images of AI project, our goals, and also some tips that can help you to do more informed choices when you pick images or when you create images for AI yourself. And then, of course, we will finalize what's next. Okay, so let's get cracking with an exercise. Okay, so what we are going to do is, you have seen that you should, we will give you 3 images that hopefully, you will have 3 images, either in your tables or those that are in online. They have a link to a Miro board, and you will have them there. So what we ask you to do is, individually, you are going to take a Post-it without lines, okay? And you are going to put in each image the message for you of that image, okay? Very simple, 1 sentence, 2, okay? So for each of you, you have 4 minutes, maybe 3. So those of you that live in Scotland, we will appreciate if you can just also tag Scotland, because we are very keen in getting your insight. If you don't live in Scotland, you are very welcome to put where you come from. Okay, so again, this is individual. It's not a test, you don't need to sign it. So each of the images, what is the message for you? Okay? Please. Okay, so again, the exercise is, you will see 3 pictures, okay, in your table, and you're going to stick to each picture a Post-it with the message you perceive. Okay? Okay. No discussion. This is individual. You are cheating. Those online, go please to the Miro board and put a virtual sticker, a yellow one, hopefully that, and those in live in Scotland, just add Scotland to it. Okay? How we are doing? The first thing that you think about it. Yeah, if you live in Scotland, just put Scotland on it and said, you know, what you think. Yeah, just stick it. Oh, I'm beginning to see stickers there. That looks good. Please stick it in each photo. We will take the photos with us. But you can go to the Miro board. Yes, fantastic. I love. Can I take this one as an example? Like that. I want them plastered with the message. Okay. How are you doing? Almost finished? I'm seeing still people writing. 1 more minute. Good. I'm seeing all those poses stick to the photos. Okay. Danny, is that okay? Yeah. Okay, so now thank you very much for playing with us. This is the beginning. So now I leave you with Tanya.
So you've hopefully now written down what you think the message is. Professor Dignam set up the day really well by showing some images like this and why they might be problematic. So we're already probably halfway there. But I'm going to go through more specifically what some of the issues are with the images. So the first thing I should say is there has been quite a bit of research done from lots of different perspectives. So there have been researchers looking from the perspective of public perceptions, what the current images, tropes of AI do for public perceptions, what they do for trust, what they do for inclusion, what they do for diversity. So there's been various different studies. I'm not going to go through them in the limited time we have now, but they are on our website and we'll leave them on the slide. But they underpin what I'm about to go through, which is 10 common tropes, some of which you will have had on your picture. So the first is the color blue. It's very distant, it creates that kind of distance. Obviously, it's got connotations of maleness, but also, interestingly, a researcher, Dr. Romeli, who also has published this on our blog, so you can find out more about this, has zoomed out here on this picture on the left, the right, sorry. And this is basically a gallery of Shutterstock images of AI, like thousands of them zoomed out. So you can see the overall blueness. And he looks from a philosophical perspective and looking at art kind of history. And wherever this is done in kind of art history, it's very much to create a mood of acquiescence. So it's this kind of encouraging people not to kind of challenge it. You can read more about that on the blog. Descending code, we probably got used to this through the sci-fi movie The Matrix. Not much to say about this, except, you know, that movie didn't go so well for technology, and sci-fi images, you know, sci-fi movies often don't. So it's also really unspecific, so it's not particularly useful. The brain is a really common trope in AI images, and although admittedly neural networks, deep learning were inspired by some of the ways that neurons work, there are more differences than similarities between human brain and machine learning. So it's kind of misleading, and some people who don't know about AI literally think that AI is brains made of circuits, which is obviously not very helpful, and it doesn't show the kind of reality of the limitations of narrow artificial intelligence. So even when these brains are used in positive ways, they still are quite problematic. There's also studies done on the history of how we represent intelligence, and it's very gendered, very colonial. So there's another layer to it as well that you can dig into. Talked about sci-fi fantasy. I love the fact that, you know, a lot of sci-fi fantasy is fantasy. You can see the breasts there that are really useful for this robot here. I'm sure they serve some great purpose. And it just does sow that kind of false expectation and fear. Sometimes we do manage to show the people that actually are involved in AI, either using it, developing it, etc. But they're always in suits. So we've got white man in suit. We sometimes have white woman in suit, as you had on your table. I don't know how many people here, other than at conferences, wear suits when they're either interacting with or using AI, but it clearly has developing AI, but it clearly has this kind of power overtone of, you know, being very kind of establishment, and that's not really the reality of AI. So when we talk about white robots, and obviously they are the predominant image is the whiteness, we're not just talking about the color, it's about the actual features. So you look at the legions of kind of robot armies, and they're very much kind of white Caucasian features. I don't need to really explain what that does for feelings of inclusion and diversity. I think it's quite self-evident, but Dr. Cantor DeHaal and Stephen Cave at the Lieberman Center for the Future of Intelligence wrote the paper, The Whiteness of AI, which digs into this a bit more. It's very fascinating. In fact, any anthropomorphization is problematic, because as soon as we start to anthropomorphize AI, we're starting to kind of think that it has feelings, it has emotions, it thinks, and you'll see a lot of news headlines as well that will say things like, this AI can now feels whether or not you are, now thinks this. It doesn't. It does exactly what it's told to do by people, by humans. And as soon as you start anthropomorphizing, whether it's Alexa, we've all seen the issues over, kind of female voices and how Alexa talks to you, you start to bring in race, gender, all of those human kind of assumptions. And it also starts to get people worrying about when these kind of human-like robot overlords are going to get rid of us. The creation meme, in case you haven't seen where this comes from, you'll probably have seen this image quite a lot. It's very much a staple of trustworthy AI images. There's lots of people that want to get across that feeling of trust with machines, working with machines, but it actually comes from Michelangelo's kind of creation of Adam, Sistine Chapel painting. And so it's imbued with very religious overtones, very ideas about this kind of mystical, all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful being. And you'll see that in lots of images that the robot is starting to become the god. Started with the man, and I think somewhere there's a study done in about 2011, like the robot became more the god. And of course, as soon as we think that either man or robot are, kind of all-knowing, all-powerful, not to be questioned, that's very problematic, and that's not the kind of relationship that actually does engender trust. Lots of virtual kind of holographic space pictures. It just makes it really intangible. It denies the real material resources, the real climate impact, the real people involved in AI, and it makes it somewhere in the future, something that's intangible and beyond our comprehension. And then finally, the sentient robot. So it's not just the fact that it's in human shape, it's this kind of feeling that this idea that it's kind of super intelligent, which I think most people in this room will probably know is not something on the cards anytime soon. In fact, anyone who does interact with their Alexa will know that this is not something that is happening anytime soon. But lots of people do believe that this is where we are because of, or certainly where we're headed in the near future, because of these types of images. And of course, there are many, many things we need to be thinking about to do with AI. But sentience is really not one of the things that we need to be looking at. So it's very distracting to the kind of current issues that Professor Dignan this morning was talking about. The things we need to be worrying about are completely cloaked and hidden by this idea of sentient robots. So I can hand around a table here. This is not definitive. It's my kind of best attempt at looking at all the different kind of tropes down one side and then the issues with them across the top, and trying to map, when we see these images, what it is that they're actually unwittingly communicating. And that might help you for the next exercise, which I'm going to hand over to Patricia for.
Thank you, Tanya. So now a group exercise. So you told us individually what you thought about those messages, and we are curious if what we present to you now has maybe changed a little bit how you interpret those messages. As well, we want to see if discussing it in group also, change a little bit your view. So in the exercise, what you are going to do is now, for those present, you see that there are paths that have lines. So the idea is that you, and for those online, I think Tristan is going to give some directions. So the idea is that you are here with those that share the table with you, and those online on the breakout rooms. You are going to discuss one image. You have 5 minutes, so it can be one or more. And then you are basically going back to put the message. Okay? A new one is the same, maybe. That has not influenced anything, but maybe what Tanya presented, as well as discussing with the colleagues in the breakout rooms or in the tables, has changed a little bit your perspective. We want to know that, okay? So please, in the next 5 minutes, discuss, take a picture. If you have more time, more, but at least one picture, and then discuss the message and stick back, you know, with the using the line pads, and online with the pink color. And for those who live in Scotland, again, it would be really nice if you can target Scotland. Okay, you have 5 minutes, go.
Hi, everyone online. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, hi.
Excellent. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms randomly. And then in the chat, there's a link to a Miro board, which is like an online whiteboard. Some of you have been using it, I've seen. And in that board, in this kind of second row down, there's a set of kind of white squares with one image in each. And like, so I've kind of made one frame for each breakout room. So hopefully your breakout room number should correspond to one of those frames. Ask me questions in the chat. I'll try and drop into the rooms. I'm going to try and do this now. Yeah, hopefully this will work. I'm going to put you into some rooms. I think there's probably a button there for you to join the room.
It's funny because I don't know what that really, to me it's kind of, it's about presenting something. To me it's, I know a lot of other people are sort of seeing the neural networks and things in that, but to me it's more about, I suppose it's because it's a glass board and we use those for teaching and record
So I mean,
lectures.
those are totally valid interpretations of what that image is, which is like, it's not telling you anything about AI. It's telling you about teaching and virtual reality and business.
We want to have a feeling for, your discussion. So a couple of volunteers that want to share the feedback, please, in the room, raise your hand. You do? Okay, and there as well. Thank you. So Tanya is going with the microphone. And which of the images? Yeah, is image. So this is about image number 1.
So at the beginning we were talking about like the integration between human and robots, or the integration of two different kinds of intelligence. But then after seeing your wonderful presentation, when we review the image, we thought about, it seems that the robot is approachable. It also seems that it's equal to us, because on the original picture, God's hand is coming from above, and we are like inferior trying to touch it. But in this one, we are equal. We also thought about, obviously, the whiteness of the image, and that is something that we don't really think about. We just think that robots are going to be white.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you so much. And this team as well, volunteer. So can you share your insights quickly?
So we had the option to, and first of all, we thought that was nonsense to have a robot writing on a computer. That was our first maybe insight we have that. And actually it shows as well like how misleading communication can be for the public as a general, because this almost operation AI robots are the embodiment of AI, and not just like a machine looking like human. It's multiple, they're everywhere in environment now, ubiquitous more and more. And I think the last element, can I? So they are, of course, it's taking all our work, and when we talk about AI, even the word, the jargon is wrong. Machine learning is much more complex. It's full of mathematics equations. It's not like just like a magic box where things happen. So the jargon should be much more approachable to the public, and then what else?
It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, thank you so much. And do we have a table from more people living in Scotland that will volunteer? Yeah, there? Yeah, even if they're here, perfect. We want to hear the people living this. Yeah, please go ahead.
So we're the Scottish table.
Perfect. Rock Scotland.
So our initial thoughts were a lot of statements about robots working on behalf of humans, making the decisions and doing the work, and autonomous. But then after we...
Sorry, which picture it is?
Sorry, it's the robot hand.
Ah, okay.
The amazing typing robot.
Okay.
And then after we kind of thought about it, we were like, well, why would a robot type? Because that's not the point of any of this, really. And we also noticed quite a lot of other things. Obviously, the robot is white, and the robot is typing at an actual keyboard, which seems ridiculous. So we went through your bingo card as well, and it hit almost every single one of the cliches. So it was very interesting, critical analysis of the image. So.
Okay, thank you so much. And now we would like to have Tristan online to summarize some of the key insights from the Miro board.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, the group that looked at image number 3, the woman in the suit with the glowing brain, we kind of thought actually we're not sure that communicates much about AI at all. It looks like someone presenting information and just using some advanced technology. So it's like the future, but not necessarily AI. And then one of the groups looked at the touching hands, where possibly there's some built-in bias with a white human and a white robot, possibly indicating the equality of human and machine in some way, and maybe showing different, maybe it communicates different perspectives depending on kind of your background and your knowledge.
Okay, thank you so much, Tristan. And now we are back here to Edinburgh. So, and where we are going to discuss really about our project, Better Images of AI. Please, Tanya.
Thank you very much. And it was great to see that you'd picked up on one of my favorites, the typing robot. The robot who's clever enough to use a computer, but not clever enough to work out that it is a computer and needs headphones. So yeah. So there was a great deal of frustration amongst many people, I think, at anyone who's communicating around AI, that the pool of stock imagery is so limited. That's why we end up with these pictures. So artists don't understand enough about AI to be able to come up with, you know, alternative metaphors or pictures. You know, in general, there are obviously some wonderful exceptions, and we don't understand enough about giving briefs to artists for them not to just copy what's already out there and everyone's regurgitating the same stuff. So there was quite a lot of frustration amongst various people kind of in my, you know, Women in AI Ethics, Springer AI and Ethics journal network. And we'd used a few of these images in the past and, you know, been a little bit burnt and called out by them. So we thought, right, we have to do something. So we set up an action group. And the first thing we did was then have a look at what better images there are. And we found none that currently existed as a project. I mean, individuals have you know, come up with good images, but we found an immense amount of people already researching and doing their own projects. So universities across Europe, we've got all sorts of partners now actually across the world. And they're looking at it either from a creative technology point of view, from a design point of view, from a philosophy, from, you know, kind of communicating science. So it's really interesting. We decided to join all these projects up. And there are three main reasons, in fact, for this. The first is that we're talking about changing the results of a Google search algorithm, which is a pretty big job. So we felt that we probably all needed to combine our efforts, given that, you know, that's a really big challenge. The second reason, really importantly, is that unless everyone working in this field pools their ideas on what better images are, what new metaphors might be, we're only really just creating somebody else's view of what AI should look like. And, you know, but being that we're here, you know, in the UK, it's kind of another, you know, Western kind of view, and not very inclusive. So we really want to get increasing collaboration from, you know, the global majority, etc. The third reason is that the actual dialogue and the discourse between all of these different people who are working in the sphere of public perceptions of AI, of representations, narratives, discourses around AI, the actual dialogue is incredibly rich, and it's really helped us, you know, all of us to think about how we, you know, think about our relationship with AI, full stop. These are the real breakthrough was made in terms of getting a project together is when we teamed up with Tristan, BBC R&D and his team, who were already working on the idea of a repository and commissioning images from their perspective. We met them at a MozFest session and realized that, you know, there was some kind of real benefit to linking it to all the other researchers and projects that were going on so that we could build a much richer repository. We in AI is the organization I set up to look at public perceptions, well, how we can, it's more AI general literacy, so how we can get people to understand better what AI is. And this became an obvious intervention point. And Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Intelligence, who, as I mentioned, Cantor Hull, Stephen Cave were involved in some of the early research around, for example, scary robots, public perceptions of AI, etc., who we're doing some research with. But it's not limited at all to those organisations. We're looking for more kind of, these are non-financial founding partners, but they're institutions that are able to give us their insight, their support, etc. And it's really helped us to bring our ideas and our project together. So we launched the website in December. It is at the moment a very small selection of images. You've seen some of them here today at actually at the summit and on the app. If anyone's looked at the app, the conference platform, I should say, and it's great to see them being used. They've been used around the world. They've been picked up, phenomenally successful, but there are still quite a few small amount. And the reason for that is that the amount of thought that goes into what we put there and the dialogue, it is actually quite a labor intensive process. And it goes beyond the images. So also on the website, you can see that we have a blog. This is a really important part of the project where we have a look at all the issues surrounding the representation of AI. So for example, we've had interviews with a blind programmer on how he imagines AI, which was really rich. We have had interviews, we've got more coming up with journalists or content creators, communicators on what their tips are, how they manage to communicate AI. And this post here, and we also have research or summaries of research that people are doing. So for example, Dr. Beth Singler, who's kind of part of our group, who's done all the work on the AI creation meme, has kind of done a summary of her research. So it's a bit of a knowledge bank, but it also enables us to share our journey with choosing the pictures and how we debate them. So this one here, you can look at the blog post, it's one of our latest images, and it shows someone training a data annotator. So we were really keen to show the people behind AI, not just the men in suits. But it's obviously a really contentious issue because on the one hand, the data work, ghost work, click work has provided loads of opportunities here. This is an organization, it's a non-profit. It gives work to refugees, to migrants. It gives opportunities that weren't there before, and also has support for the workers. And so it was great. They're called Humans in the Loop. It was great to have a picture from them of real life. This is what happens in their training center. But then on the other hand, we also have on our site the anonymized, rather exploited click worker pictures from Max Gruber, which shows the darker side of click work. And this blog post looks at some of the research that went into both those kind of sides. So it's a really good place to actually debate through pictures some of the images. And we found that when communicating to people, that it helps them actually to understand the issues behind the images. So it goes beyond just getting rid of bad images. It's actually about how we talk and communicate more meaningfully with people. We make sure that this is carried on by having a very detailed description of each picture. How does this picture represent AI? Quite a lot of content users, creators don't actually know much about AI. So this is somewhere that they can learn, is this image relevant? Maybe learn a bit. Here you've got, it's actually an AI generated image, but it's another metaphor. It's looking at large image libraries and the amount of kind of texts that are needed to create things like GPT-3. So it's a way for people to learn about things like GPT-3, for example. They're free to use. This is really important as long as they're credited. Quite a few are donated. And we make it really easy on every download card to put the credit and also the alt text. We encourage people who use the images to also use the alt text when they share the images so that people who are reliant on screen readers can also still get this knowledge from the images. So I'm going to hand over now to Tristan, who's going to talk about some of the images that we have on the site in more detail and how we arrived at them.
Cool, thank you, Tanya. So yeah, so far we've mainly looked at kind of the existing images, but the point of our project is to work out what might be better. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And we think what we want to show is the enormous variety of applications of AI in the world and the research. We want to represent a wider range of humans and human cultures than that kind of typical Caucasian business person that you see in some of those images. We want to show the human and the social and the environmental impacts of AI. And we want to try to accurately portray the capabilities and how it's generally suited to quite specific tasks and categorically not general intelligence like equivalent to humans. All the while, we want to avoid monolithic and unknowable representations of AI and also avoid the glowing brains or the robots, unless we're particularly making a point about those things. Next slide. Thank you. So we've interviewed some AI engineers and researchers and some members of the public, and we gathered these characteristics of how people think about AI, which we thought would help us create better images that better communicate what we want to. And so these are things like AI is all based on maths and statistics and probabilities, and it's about finding patterns and connections in data. So you can imagine kind of visual metaphors of that. AI works at a very large scale. It manipulates almost unimaginable amounts of data. Most AI systems in use today only really know about one thing. It's quite narrow intelligence. And AI is often very complex and opaque, and it's hard to explain how it works. Sometimes it's even hard for the experts to understand exactly what's going on inside these systems. AI works quite differently to the human brain, and in some ways it's some kind of a non-human intelligence. These systems are artificial and constructed, and they're designed and coded by humans normally. AI is almost always a socio-technical system. It's combinations of computers and humans and society. Humans are, as Tanya mentioned, are often the source of the data. AI is quite invisible and it's often hidden, and you don't necessarily realize that you're interacting with something which has AI powering it. And it's increasingly common and becoming pervasive and affects us all in so many areas and is therefore quite powerful. And finally, AI is fallible and it can go wrong, often in seemingly strange ways. Next slide, please. So we want images that can compete with existing stock images on an aesthetic and cultural level. So the things that we commissioned for this, we need them to be designed for use in news articles and blog posts or marketing material and all sorts of places. They need to be eye-catching, engaging. They need to be visually coherent at different sizes, whether they're enormous posters in rooms or tiny thumbnails on your phone. Ideally, the images need to be immediately understandable as relating to machine learning and AI. Because while we're setting the project up in opposition to glowing blue brains and the inscrutable robots, those are widely culturally understood as meaning AI. And if that vernacular is required to make a successful image, then we need to maybe adapt it or rationalize it. We think photographic style images are probably the most widely useful and dominant aesthetic. And fit well alongside existing stock images. So that's our starting point. We're not ruling out other styles, but that's just our starting point, and you'll see lots of our images are like that. And in the project, we've gathered a set of new images. Some were commissioned by the project, some were created by the team and our partners, and some were kindly donated. The one on screen here is one of the commissions. Alan was the first artist we commissioned. And yeah, we asked him to try to make images that were similar in style to existing stock imagery. So this image shows a young black man wearing a black coat staring past the camera in front of a blue cloudy sky. And the scene is refracted in different ways by a fragmented glass grid, which is supposed to be a visual metaphor for the way that AI can be used to extract and analyze behavioral and demographic data and augment our understanding of complex phenomena. And then there's a neural network diagram overlaid in the background, familiarizing you with the formal architecture of AI systems and linking it to some of the existing imagery. Next slide. And for that commission, Alan also used the same visual devices and styles on some other images representing different applications such as medicine, nature, and social media. Next slide. In this image, we see a banana, a plant, and a glass flask on a monochrome surface, each one surrounded by a thin white frame with letters attached that spell the name of the objects. So these are bounding boxes, which are commonly used in AI research to signify where a computer vision algorithm has detected an object in an image. And here the artist, Max Gruber, has played with that aesthetic because the bounding boxes here are 3D printed frames positioned in the physical environment around the objects. And next slide. And this one, created by my colleague at BBC Research and Development, David Mann, and based on some photos that I took of a local tree during lockdown. And it shows 8 photos of the same tree taken at different times of the year. The last photo is highly pixelated. So this is intended to represent the process of machine learning. The set of trees represents the training data, and the white block pattern running across the image, becoming more aligned, indicates progress towards the machine's objectives. And the pixelated tree is supposed to be a reminder that machines don't see like humans see. So that's some of our collection. We think our images go some way towards meeting some of the goals which we described. We certainly haven't covered everything. We want to feature more people, for instance. And you've probably got your own opinions on these images, and we do, and we always have interesting discussions around any new images that get submitted. We're continuing to grow the collection. All the images that we've shown you, as Tanya mentioned, are free to download, use, and adapt. They're all under a Creative Commons license. But now back to Tanya.
Thanks, Tristan. It's great to have Tristan kind of remotely. I think that's, thank you to the two. It's all working very well so far, I think. So he was just talking about ways that he has actually, with just his team, looked at how they take those tree images and actually enhance them. And one of the things we wanted to get across in this workshop is that there are ways that if you're communicating in AI or you know people that are, that we're able to suggest ways that we can do it better that aren't just limited to like download a picture from, you know, very limited gallery that currently the better images have. So it's the whole project that we're doing is not just about pointing people to our images, it's about enabling people to take learnings from that and create their own. And if you know of any good images that you've seen, send them to us, because we always like to highlight good work that's going on there. So here are 4 very brief ideas on how you might be able to suggest people or might be able to in your own practice to improve images. So taking inspiration is definitely one of them. We found that people using, looking at the current images that we've got, and you can look at the gallery, it can spark some ideas on doing similar things to the particular project that you're trying to communicate. Really importantly is this idea of broadening the keywords, such as broadening the idea of what we're trying to communicate. And most of the pictures that we've talked about that are very cliched are because people have typed in AI or, you know, kind of machine learning. Whereas actually, if you think a bit deeper about what it is that you're trying to communicate and use very specific keywords to do with, you know, you might come up with new metaphors or might want to look at the processes, the people, etc., the impact. And then actually those images, it doesn't need to like scream AI necessarily. You can look at what it is you're trying to communicate about AI. If you do want to add that AI layer onto it, as Alan Warburton did, Tristan explained how, you know, you had the kind of neural network diagram in the backgrounds and you had the fragmented glass. There are ways that without necessarily needing to be a digital artist like Alan, that you can do that. You know, definitely you could brief a designer to work on existing, you know, kind of non-AI images, but it's actually possible, as Tristan showed with the trees, to collage things, you know, using something quite basic like Photoshop as well. And use them as a basis for design briefs. We've got one that you can play around with here, which is really cool. One of our artists, Rens Dimmendahl, who's actually a data scientist, so this proves you don't need to be an artist. He built a little model which basically represents the decision making in a decision tree and turns it into a triptych of pictures. So you start with so actually we've got ones which are the other way around, but you start at the picture and then you see how the you know, the computer's breaking it down. But if you go to this link, we will tweet it. I think may not work on this. I think I don't know if those online can just click on it, but it's basically enabling you to put in any picture that you want. It could be your own picture, and play around with how you might be able to make it look this kind of process behind it. So that's just a quick kind of thing. So the 4th reason, I'm going to hand back over to Patricia, who's going to think about how we make sure that pictures have ethics and inclusion also embedded into them.
Thank you very much, Tanya. So this is beyond the project Better Images of AI, but we thought it may be really relevant for you. I've been working in tech for more than 20 years. And in 2019, I wanted, you know, to embed inclusion and ethics in, you know, to explore ethics and inclusion in technology. But I realized I didn't have a systematic approach. It looked to me, it was like, yeah, inclusion sounds fine, but it also is, you know, overwhelming or even sometimes a little bit fluffy, okay? And the same thing with ethics. I was like, wow, you know, I don't have a PhD in philosophy, so how I can tackle that? So this is where I created the Ethics and Inclusion Framework, where basically is a free online resource that walks you through a large set of criteria for inclusion as well as ethics. For example, in ethics, we look at financial vulnerability, data vulnerability, and so on. So even if you have a very good knowledge about the different criteria for ethics and inclusion, it may also help you to do it systematically, also to invite colleagues to have those conversations, okay? Again, you can look into my website and it's a free resource. And we cannot let you go without you working again. So you have spent now about 55 minutes with us, but if it's only talking to us, you know, talking between you, maybe there is not so much impact. So what we want is basically to reflect for 1 minute on what you want, what is the impact of this discussion we have had today, okay? And that impact can be a commitment, okay, about, as a result of this workshop and talking with the colleagues today, one thing you will do differently, one thing maybe you will just stop doing, or maybe you will start doing, or one thing that you have changed your views about. Okay, so you have 1 minute to put it into a post-it and to put it into the table. Okay, and for those online, again, take a post and put it into the Miro board with an action. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, I see people writing. Are we ready with our commitment? Yes.
Does anyone want to share?
Oh, come on. We are all for accountability. Oh, yes, we have one person.
So I sometimes run little seminars, and all the images I used are all the ones that are basically terrible. It's all blue and hands. And I promise I'll stop.
Wow, massive win. Anybody else? It can be very tiny. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I'm going to be a bit controversial. My work as a roboticist and designer is to fight all these images we have and then the cliche. However, I would like to have a discussion about today. The thing about robot being white never occurred to me, and I see it as a more plastic vision of as a designer version of it. So I think there's maybe something to explore as well, because colors maybe doesn't mean the same thing on a machine and then on a human. So maybe there's something as well to discuss. Or I think there's no one way in this direction. There's like other ways, and multidisciplinary approach, having designers and researchers working together, and then people from social science will improve that, and not just like the lone wolf myth of being this Elon Musk type of people making robots better, for example.
Okay.
Thank you. That actually leads on very nicely to, I think, the wrap up. I will find the clicker. That's a really interesting point. I think that the whiteness is not just the color, it's in the pictures. I'm not saying the design of robots, but in the pictures of robots, it is the actual features I think, as well. Yeah, really interested to hear your views. So the reason that's very relevant is I'll skip to the third point, we are funded now by the Arts and Humanities Research Council to do some research with the LCFI. So this is with Dr. DeHaal, Dr. Stephen Cave, who've done research along with other people on what's wrong with current images. What we now need to do is get some research behind the new methods that we're looking at and what's missing. So what are the things that we're not addressing in this project? What would be better ways that can feed back into design? So when you get, you know, robot designers talking to graphic, you know, designers talking to, you know, philosophers and anthropologists, I mean, that's where real exciting things happening. So that's, we'd love to invite you to be part of the research. Anyone here who wants to come along to that, there'll be roundtables, there'll be workshops to basically find out, you know, how can we create images that are as compelling? Because let's face it, these robots are really compelling. How can we create images that do the compelling job that is needed by, you know, certainly news editors, etc. But do it better, and it's to get some research evidence. So that's one way you can get involved, is get involved in the research. So please, you know, I'll speak to you about that. We can also join the community. So we are all a collaboration. We in AI is the legal entity because we have to have insurance and sign contracts, but it's just coordination of lots of different people. So everyone's welcome to join. We need lots more pictures. And, you know, if you can find us any, send us any, tell anybody, just really, really interested, especially, as I said, from a more diverse kind of set of artists. And we are definitely looking for funding. We've got some amazing ideas on competitions, so we can do sector specific competitions. So if someone working in, you know, kind of fintech or territory specific, to actually look at generating art for what it looks like in that area. And we also want an artist in residence, because we've had so many people come up with ideas on how to make images better, but we now need the funding to not exploit artists to create them. So yeah, lots of ways to get involved. Contact here if you want to talk about any partnerships or anything. Feel free to contact me. My email is on there, or kind of just general stuff, info at Better Images of AI, and our website betterimagesofai.org. So yeah, love to invite you all to keep feeding back to us on this mission. I think that's it. Thank you all very much for coming. I'm going to wrap up, Patricia, hand back over. Been really great to get your feedback, and we look forward to looking at your posting.
Yeah, exactly. Please, you know, share in Twitter, LinkedIn, you know, reach out to us and let them post it there. You know, we will be sharing in social media some of the findings. Okay, and looking forward to you know, to seeing you you know, getting in touch with us with new images. Thank you.
Thank you.